Hey guys, and welcome back to some magical story time, the show here on the channel where I read stories that I've written, or exaggerate recounts of my own life, or retell urban legends, and soon to be experimenting, of course, with AI tales as well. But for this episode is something I've written. A fanfic of Thomas and Friends for the now abandoned reboot of Tales from the Tracks. So I thought I'd read it here for you guys. Here we go. Early one morning at Tidmer Sheds, the engines were awaiting their day's jobs when suddenly Thomas spoke. "It is a lovely morning, isn't it?" he said. "It certainly is, Thomas," said a deep booming voice. "Glad you agree, Gordon," said Thomas. "I didn't say anything, little Thomas," replied Gordon. "Oh, then who did?" asked Thomas. "Thomas the Tank Engine! I would have thought you would know your controller's voice when you hear it," boomed the voice. Thomas looked down in front of him, and to his surprise there stood the fat controller. "Cinders and ashes!" he exclaimed. "Never mind, Thomas, we all make mistakes from time to time," replied the fat controller kindly. Me? Make mistakes? Oh, the indignity!" said Gordon. "Yes, Gordon. Even you make mistakes sometimes," replied the fat controller. "Oh, the indignity!" repeated Gordon. "For goodness sake, Gordon, will you stop whining?" said James angrily. "Me? Stop whining? Oh, the indignity!" said Gordon stroppily. "Silence!" snapped the fat controller. "You can find another engine to do my work today." "I'm not doing any work," said Gordon sulkily. "James shall do your work," the fat controller ordered. James delightedly went off to get ready. "Yes, sir," he said as he left the sheds. "Fancy a big important engine like Gordon sulking because he makes mistakes," said Percy innocently. "I do not make mistakes. I am a very important engine, silly Percy," scoffed Gordon. "That's quite enough of that," snapped the fat controller. "But sir, started Gordon again, but the fat controller cut across him. "For goodness sake, Gordon, will you stop this ridiculous brag about not making mistakes? You are making a massive mistake right now, showing how selfish and childish you can be. You can stay in your shed until I can trust you again," he scolded. "Yes, sir," replied Gordon, now feeling ashamed of himself for his outburst. Will Gordon redeem himself? When will the fat controller be able to trust him again? You'll have to wait until next time to find out. Well, about that, guys. There are two more stories. The next story is Gordon goes back to work, and I'm going to read it for you now. So here we go. Gordon was stuck in the shed after the trouble he caused a few days before. He wondered if he would ever be allowed out to pull his express again. Just then the fat controller came to see him. "I see you are sorry, Gordon." "Yes, sir," said Gordon sadly. And you realize now that you are not the most important engine on this railway? Asked the Fat Controller. Yes, sir, replied Gordon. Very well, Gordon. You may return to work. I have a special job for you, replied the Fat Controller. A special job, sir? Said Gordon excitedly. I need you to take trucks full of precious cargo to the mainland, replied the Fat Controller. Gordon was cross at these words. Trucks! But I'm an important tender engine! Tender engines don't shunt! He shouted. Gordon the big engine! Thundered the Fat Controller. I'm sorry, sir. I meant of course I'll take the special train, said Gordon. Excellent. That's a good engine. Off you go and get ready, replied the Fat Controller, and off Gordon went to get ready for his special train. As he pulled into the goods yard, he met Edward, who gave him a cheerful peep peep, which Gordon returned with a jovial, Good morning, my dear Edward, as he was coupled to his special train. Hello, Gordon. Nice to see you out and about again, said Edward. Thank you, little Edward. So sorry, can't stop. The Fat Controller is counting on me to deliver this precious cargo, he replied, and left the yard. What's got into him? Asked Edward in great surprise. He never thought he'd ever see Gordon so happy to be pulling trucks instead of coaches. Thomas saw everything from across the yard and was just as surprised as Edward. Who is that engine, and what has he done with Gordon? He asked. Gordon was now halfway across the island when he started to run out of coal and broke down. Bother! How will we deliver this cargo now? He said crossly. He needed rescuing and the cargo needed delivering. And nobody knew he was stuck halfway across the island until a signalman noticed and went out and sent out an emergency call. Edward came rushing to the rescue as soon as he heard the alarm. Don't worry, Gordon. We'll have you out of here in half a jiffy, he said, as he was coupled to the back of Gordon's train, and together they completed the job and delivered the cargo. Thank you, Edward, said Gordon. That's all right, Gordon. That's what friends are for, replied Edward. And okay, guys. The last of these 3 stories is Prefect of the Railway. Here we go. Everybody on the island of Sodor was busily working, and the engines were rushing back and forth, doing many different tasks. All the engines, that was, except Percy, who was going around ordering the other engines about. In fact, if you were to pay a visit, you'd hear a loud, pompous voice yelling, Move aside there, clear the way, I'm a prefect! You'd be forgiven for assuming it's Gordon, but you're wrong. That would be the voice of Percy the small engine, bossing all the engines about. Percy, Percy, why does he have to shout? Whenever he's near, you can always hear him bossing everybody about. All the other engines were fed up with this, so they held an indignation meeting. Percy's getting on my pistons, said Thomas. He thinks he's the literal lord of the rails, said Edward. Gordon blew his whistle and everything went quiet. I know we're all thoroughly annoyed by Percy's behavior as of late, going around bossing us all about. And I propose we all tell the Fat Controller, he suggested. Just then Percy came through the yard yelling, You lazy engines just lost yourselves 10 points each. I'm a prefect. I have the right. He told them. The big engines just blew their whistles, making him jump. Percy, you have got to stop with this prefect nonsense. It's not funny, said Toby. It's disgraceful, scolded Gordon. Disgusting, added James. Despicable, finished Henry. It needs to stop at once, Edward told him crossly. Percy, don't you dare go back to bossing us about. One more time and we will tell the Fat Controller, Thomas scolded. Percy just puffed away without another word. Not even an apology. Oi! Get back here this minute! You haven't apologized yet! Gordon yelled after him. What's this all about, Gordon? Asked a familiar booming voice. It was the Fat Controller. He'd come to investigate the cause of the commotion. It's Percy, sir. He's been going around bossing us about, saying he's a prefect. He's simply too big for his buffers, Gordon told him calmly. Could you please have a word with him, sir? Asked Edward. The Fat Controller thought about it. I need to have a talk with Percy about this. I did not authorize him to go ordering you all about, he said. He's been telling us he's something called a prefect, Henry told him. Prefect, indeed. I most certainly did not authorize such a position. Nothing like that will ever happen on my railway, boomed the Fat Controller. And those are the 3 stories, Thomas Fan stories I've written. Now, I hope you enjoyed those. It's honestly, I wrote them ages ago, but I'm presenting them to you here. And I just thought the prefect story was a fun one to write. Because the engine's name, I was doing the prefect thing. Yeah, it was a reference to Harry Potter, okay? Okay. Anyway. That is it for this episode of Some Magical Story Time. Next time, well, you'll have to wait and see what the next episode's going to be. But until then, though, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have us a magical time.